Hey, everybody, welcome to Simple Interrupted. This is a podcast where we talk about what's actually happening inside of veterinary practices. I'm your host, Mary Schwartz. I'm a CVT turned veterinary technology nerd. And each episode, we unpack the client journey, technology, communication, and all the systems that are supposed to make your life easier, but sometimes they don't. So let's get into it. I've got Stephanie here with me today. Stephanie, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie. I am a veterinary consultant. I have many years in the veterinary industry and I love it. Unique is I love client communication and client experience. So I started as a CSR and then became a practice manager and was lucky enough to really get to work with client education and client engagement platforms. And so I am now a full consultant for veterinary practices.
That's got to be a lot of fun. I imagine you see a lot of different stuff in the process of doing that consulting work.
Yeah, we see a lot, and I've been lucky to work with all kind of forms and types and hospitals from private to big box companies to smaller consolidators. So there's a place for all of us, and I've learned so much and enjoyed so much of the work that I get to do with those hospitals.
Now, one of the things that you really help hospitals with and that you're kind of an expert on is kind of defining the customer journey and what it means to them. And it's not something that I had ever really thought of in practice very much, at least not in that exact phrasing. But I would love to have you kind of define that for us and let us understand what it really means to have a customer journey in our practices.
Yes, of course. So I think as a CSR and a practice manager, I didn't think about it either. And the
Yeah.
reason I kind of love to stand up and shout it to the rooftop is because I think when you empower our teams and our hospitals to like really do well at the client journey, the clients are nicer to us and our days are better. So as a CSR,
Yes.
I'm happier. As a technician, I'm happier. As a practice manager and an assistant, and it can like everything just flows better when you are understanding the client journey. And then I
Hmm.
believe a lot of times when I say client journey to a hospital, they're like, of course I know the client journey. Well, you really, when you really dive into it, do you? And then if you really break it down, are you setting yourself up for success throughout the client journey? So why make things harder when you can make things easier before they get bad? So if you really start to look at the client journey and understand the client wants, then it's just a happier, healthier hospital. So that's really my goal.
I would say it's probably pretty easy to lose track of some of the pieces of the client journey, right? Especially because as humans, we obviously are always coming from our own perspective on things. And so when we're in clinic, we're thinking about the moments that a customer is in the practice with us. What are some black holes in the client journey that a lot of clinics miss or maybe don't really give enough attention to?
It's a great question. So I think many times in practice, you're very much focused on your part of the client journey. And when we do that, sometimes it doesn't set us up for success as a whole because there's never going to be a day that veterinary medicine is not a team sport. But sometimes we forget the rest of it. So some of the parts of the client journey, honestly, probably every part, we tend to forget some parts of it depending on what position that we're in. The first part, though, probably is the most commonly because it's a higher level. Like, how do they find us? Like, the first part of the journey is search, find.
Hmm.
It's pretty simple. I
Yeah.
want to go to a veterinarian, and how do I get to you? And so sometimes as a practice, we forget or we don't give that part enough credit because
Hmm.
when a client comes in and you have presented yourself somehow online accurately, they come into our clinic with set expectation or clear expectations of the type of hospital and the type of service that they're going to get. And that is as simple as, as a CSR, do you look at your website? As a CSR, do you look at your reviews?
Hmm.
And as a technician, do you know if you even have online booking? Like things like that. How are
Yeah.
you presenting yourself to the public outside of just what happens in your clinic? And then the fun part about this is it's all of those things are easy to do. I mean, getting a review is not easy to do, but managing your reviews is, and making sure your website's up to date and making sure you do social media posts, like all of those things. We call them reputation management / marketing platforms. But to me, that's how they come in like how they they're not coming in thinking you're a vaccine clinic because you
Right.
presented yourself as a high level boutique hospital. So they're coming in with clear expectations. And then I think sometimes we get bogged down in the scheduling piece and then the wait piece. And so I think a lot of times that second, so you go from how do we find us, and now they have to schedule an appointment.
Yeah.
That piece can just be, it's one of the ones that we think like client journey obviously starts with an appointment, but can we make that easier? Do we have to do what we did 5-10 years ago? No, there's so many ways. And are we speaking the client's language? I think is really, really important. When we look at what a client wants, they want us to be kind to their pet. They want us to be good humans, right? But they also want us to communicate in a way that they understand. So are you using the technology in order to get them in the door in a way that they understand? And a lot of that's digital, that's technology. And so that would be scary words would be direct booking.
Hmm.
Do you allow them to book directly into your clinic? And then are you also utilizing technology to reduce wait times in your hospital? So do you use online forms? So I think many of those, and then I have to say, and I'm the part of the journey that I think a lot of us completely forget
Hmm.
is the follow-up. And so
Yes.
I think we used to always just call everybody and say, how's your, well, we didn't call it, we called them to give them lab results or check on the ones that were sick. But how
Sure.
can you touch everybody? Well, you just send a text message to ask, and then you utilize your platform, whatever it is, to customize it so it sounds very personal, right? Can you pull in the pet's name? Can you simply say, if you have concerns, reach directly out to us and just really touch everybody that came in? Can you send an educational pamphlet on something that you did in the hospital that day? So did you give puppy vaccines and you have education, a link to something to learn the value of puppy vaccines because they just received it? And so are you doing that to be like, oh my gosh, they remember they saw me. I'm not just a number. They
Yes.
remember that I was there. And then do you ask them to schedule again? Right. So that follow-up piece of that journey, because then nobody wants to like speed date all the time online, like all the time seeing a new person. No, you want to have them come back. And so follow up, get them that link, schedule them again, and then the journey starts again.
I think that understanding the why is so important there with the follow-up piece. I think a lot of times we miss out on that with our clients. And if you think about, there's a statistic out there, I believe it's like you retain less than 10% of what you hear in a conversation, right? So if you have a pet owner that's in a room with a doctor getting a new diagnosis, or to your point, learning how to care for a new puppy, here's when your next vaccines are going to be, here's some training tips, etc., and they leave, less than 10% of that is going out the door with them in their brains, right? And that's not their fault. That's just human nature. But if we can provide that customized follow up experience, make sure they're getting that information in the way that makes sense to them and not just a printed out pamphlet that's going to get thrown in the recycling as soon as they get home, then
100%.
we do generate those return visits, right? Because then it becomes, oh, I can't remember if I was supposed to go back, or I went and got my puppy's vaccines the first set and not the entire series, but they're vaccinated now and they don't realize they need more boosters. If we can close that loop, not only is it better for the health of the animal and the life cycle of the customer, but we're actually creating a better relationship based on mutual understanding of what to expect.
Yes. And then when you combine like overall in life, you retain 10%. Now put yourself in the shoes as a pet parent. You have
Yes.
you've committed, you got a new puppy. I'm gonna go in, or a kitten. I'm gonna go, let's do kitten because that's even harder. A kitten, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna get them um an exam, I'm gonna do their vaccines. I've got this, I've got enough money. It's gonna be okay. Because there's a lot of stress nowadays over sticker shock. Like we
Yes.
have you are as a practice now experiencing building trust in like minutes. Like you have, they don't come in anymore with trust. They
Right.
will when you retain them, but they don't immediately come in with trust. So we have to build that trust really quickly, and then you build it. You're good. You got them in. You got the appointment scheduled. They're in the exam room. You rocked it in the exam room. You've given them your name. You've given them your card. You're good. And then they check out and they're like, oh, okay. So then they're like, okay. And they were trying to retain it, but then they got a bill, they paid
Yep.
it. The cat, I mean, like, the exam didn't take as long as their brain thinks that cost should have equaled, right? So,
Yes.
and like they think about it from that side. And so now they don't remember any value. So they kind of remember what the doctor said. Their cat was fine when he came in. He's fine when he left. He doesn't really drink out of a toilet bowl. So does he need that? That's like, they start to think of
Yeah.
all of these things. He's not outside. He's not going to get attacked by a raccoon. Like all of the things. Did I really
Yep.
need that? And so then what we do is if we do not follow up, think about it, that client then starts to escalate to go, I think he's okay for a couple of years, at least
Yeah.
until that rabies is done. But
Uh-huh.
if you follow up and you give them not only material to validate what you did in the hospital, but a personal touch, like, I'm your person if you have any concerns, information on what you did in the hospital. If there's things that they can watch for when they get home, give them that. So they're like, oh my goodness, what they did. And now they're following up. Not only was there value in what they did, but they also remember me. And so then that increases their retention, because what is one of the things that we're having a hard time with is compliance. Like, I talk and talk and
Yes.
talk, and nobody says yes to anything. But that follow up kind of validates what you did and reminds them of what they need next time. And that can happen even in your simplest, like, sick appointments, where you're like, come back for skin recheck in 3 weeks. They get to the front desk and they're like, wow, that was more. And so then the dog doesn't itch anymore. Guess what? And so that
Yes.
follow up, and then you follow up again, like, continue to remind them in ways that are digital. You don't have to call everybody. Send them something that they're reading. And then, send them a personalized text message. And those are ways that we are communicating in a language that they understand, but we understand that you don't retain everything that happens in an exam room, especially when your pet is sick.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think that you're getting at preventing buyer's remorse, which we don't think of them as buying something from us, right? Like we're getting a service, we're doing those kind of things, but they're purchasing something that they need to see value in. And the only way you combat that buyer's remorse is by continuing to show and prove out the value. And especially with cats, I mean, you see it all the time, right? Like, hey, we prescribed this medication or whatever, carprofen for your dog that's limping, right? Well, I got the dog home, it stopped limping, so I stopped giving the carprofen. It's the same idea with any sort of recheck or medical issue. Oh, they're feeling better. So do I really need to go pay another 60, 80, $100 exam fee just to see if this is really getting better? Understanding that why is really, really key. Um, I'd love to know, like, what are some examples of places where clinics might be losing trust, or there might be some unintentional breakdown of trust happening with their customers that they might not even realize?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. So I think when I think there's a breakdown in trust when we don't have visibility, any kind of visibility in what we do
Hmm.
or how much we cost, right? And so I think I've worked with clinics that are amazing clinics. If they could see behind the curtains, these clients would love them, but we don't show them behind the curtains in any way. And so we have to think about ways that we can do that, that makes our team okay and us comfortable too. And so when I see this, when I say that, I mean, they come in and we take the pets to the back for the exam. Okay. That is like, um, could we, if that is something we need to do, which it is many times for urgent cases, or you don't want them to see what you're doing, can you send them a picture of your pet?
Hmm.
A quick text message picture, to show them, what you're doing in the back. Is there an educational video that you can show them about how we're cleaning the ears, and why
Hmm.
it looks like that? So if you are doing it and it looks, show the pet parent how to do it. And then the other is, a lot of trust is broken, during the estimate process, is if we don't have a really clear estimate process. So we have to battle when we think about a client want. They not only want to know that their pet is taken care of and that they're with a team that is like good humans, and that we provide accessible, efficient care so they can get in the door. We're not
Yeah.
locking the door, we're not blocking the door, we're in the door. The third thing that they want is to know that we understand that they are juggling the love for their pet
Hmm.
with their wallet.
Yeah.
And so when we have a trust breakdown, many times it's related to cost. And that gives us in vet like a bad taste in our mouth because it's like, oh, it's not about cost. This thing's cost. But there's not an awareness. And so when
Right.
we go in with trying to not have that conversation or provide that information, then sometimes there's a breakdown of trust. And so I think when you think about it in the clinic and with like, how do we do this in a way that doesn't slow us down, and provides a good customer service, is doesn't mean you show them before they come there. You got to build that trust with a conversation and an introduction, but then you provide them with a clear estimate and potentially on the back end. And you could do that digitally. I've seen that
Yeah.
and sat in hospitals that have done that in a way that pops up on my phone and I can look at it. But if you don't have that, then that's okay too. But you've got to provide it. And just so many clients are so digital that it's super easy to like sign on your phone, use digital forms to work for you, not against you. Um,
Yeah.
and then I have this estimate. You know what? I don't have another one. Like have some backup options for this client, but don't hide it. Don't try to you know, not explain that it's going to cost this amount, and don't try to feel like, well, if you do the exam and then you add this and add this. No, provide an estimate of what we recommend as best care for this pet and be really clear. And then if that doesn't work for the client, it's okay. We'll have another estimate, and we're going to talk through it. So trust is broken many times when we don't set clear expectations. And I
Yes.
and I encourage everyone to be really proud of what we do in our hospitals and be really proud of what we charge, because that means that you have really dedicated team members that we are paying. We have equipment that we want to use. We have supplies that we can sell because we charge appropriately. And so, but it's not fair to the client not to know that. So provide it in a way that's digestible. And so many times, and it doesn't have to be like, let's talk about it for an hour. Maybe you provide it and then come back in, have them a little bit of time to look at it, come back in and, okay, I've seen the estimate. Do you have any questions? Actually, no, I think I'm good. And then you can move on. If they have questions, they've had time to digest it and they can ask those questions. And so sticker shock is a definite trust breaker. And then honestly, follow up when you don't say you're going to.
Hmm.
If you say, if I did a fecal and I paid for a fecal, I want to know what it says. And our thing is like, well, the no news is good news. I had a clinic that used to say that. And that I was like, I feel like when they're paying more for the fecal, no news is I shouldn't have done it. And
Yes.
so let's do, and guys, there's so many ways to do that with a cute text template with, pulling the name. You don't have to do it the hard way. You don't have to call but you can text them and tell them in a really nice blurb that I'm so glad you did the fecal. It's negative today. Congratulations. And just really that follow up.
Absolutely. And I mean, you can keep it cute, put your little poop emoji in there,
Uh-huh.
bring the clients in. I really, it interests me coming away from the in-clinic side of things and looking back on it. You know, you always want to believe the best in people, right? But I think when you're in that moment presenting an estimate and the client starts hemming and hawing and nitpicking things, it's easy to just immediately jump to, well, they just don't, they don't get it, blah, 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 whatever, and not really think about how it's our job to help them get it. And that doesn't also always mean they're going to purchase a service, right? So it needs to become a collaborative experience. When you have over 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, instead of going in and just being like, well, if you don't get, all of these things on this list, you're a bad pet owner, giving them time to, like you said, digest it, and then collaboratively working with them. Okay, I hear you. Like right now, the senior blood work might not be something that you can do. Why don't we come back in 3 months and we can just do it as a technician appointment? Give them some time to recoup the cost from the initial appointment, let them understand what that cost is going to be in 3 months, work with them to figure out how they can afford or what they really need to do. Like what's really, really important. It's obviously all really important, but what is the key things that they should not walk out of a hospital with, um, and guide them to that, be their consultant, help them with that process. I think that can really go a long way in building trust.
Oh, absolutely. And I think in vet med, especially when I've worked in, I mean, I did it. I was in an emergency hospital for 8 years. And so we had
Yeah.
all walks of life coming in. And sometimes, because those of us that work in this industry are very much people pleasers overall. We don't like people to be mad at us, and we want to help, right? And so,
Right.
at the end of the day, most of us came in because we love pets and animals, but that means that we don't particularly want to get yelled at by a human. And I want to make everybody happy, because when a human is happy, the pet is well taken care of. And so sometimes we make assumptions, and I'm encouraging everyone to not to present what is the best recommended for that patient, and then have the conversation, and then utilize, and I know I sound like a broken record, but it's utilize your platforms, whatever they are, to benefit you, to
Hmm.
reiterate what you said. So you backtracked a little bit and you want them to do the lab work. That's okay. Let's break it up a little bit. Let's do this today because your pet needs this today. But the wellness lab work, we can actually schedule that out, get them scheduled. If they will not schedule, send them a link to schedule when they get home. Like, do all the things and then send them a follow up, with the recommended, like, what are they going to be testing for in that lab work? Why should they do it? Really start to use your platforms to benefit you, so that you're not constantly, because guess what? Then you avoid that phone call a lot of times.
Yep.
You have already, talked to them, and you can schedule them in the exam room for that next one, and then tell them, you know what, all you have to do is text us if that time doesn't work, and we'll reschedule it. But let's just get you on the books right now, because it sounds like you want to do it. You just can't do it today. No big deal. Let's get you scheduled for 3 weeks. Does that sound okay with you? Put them on the books. And then if they want to reschedule, make it easy for them to reschedule. Have a way that they can communicate with you, and you either send them a link to reschedule, or they have a way to, communicate with you over a text platform, so that they don't have to pick up the phone and call, and you don't have to pick up the phone and answer. And so that makes
Sometimes the most important part.
yes, 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 yes. Because again, we know ourselves is that
Right.
we're going to, and we do it on the phone too. Well, I mean, if that time doesn't work, yeah, sure. Yeah, you can call me back. We do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
So if you have those that can schedule without that awkward, back and forth, and suddenly sometimes we're on the phone as a CSR for like 30 minutes. When honestly, if they had just had an ability to look at our schedule ahead of time, they could have just picked the time that worked for us, or worked for them and us, honestly. And so remember that these things are scary, and technology is scary for us because we don't like change. Because what works is working, and why break it?
Yeah.
Because those calls, that 30 minutes that you spent doing that piece, could have been spent on a client that you needed to talk to about their sick pet.
Yes. Yes. You got to reallocate your time to where it matters most and it has the biggest impact. So, before we leave folks today, I would love to hear just kind of a summary of what you think a good client journey looks like. What is that from the client's perspective, when from the moment they walk or from the moment they start searching for their practice
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
after their appointment?
That's a great question. And I love the client journey. And I think many times I repeat it to myself. And so when we, as a clinic, we should all know this. So the client journey starts with what we said: search. How do they find us? We got to have them find us somehow that makes us look like we're a really good clinic. So how do they
Yes.
find us? And then once they find us, how are they contacting us, and how are they scheduling? And so that piece is so important for us as a, it speaks to my heart as a CSR, because if the only way to contact you is phone, let's talk about it. Let's think about
Hmm.
it. And how do they schedule? And then the next part of the journey is they are scheduled, and they arrive and wait. Um,
Hmm.
okay, that piece, the you how are you optimizing that piece of the journey? Do you have ways to communicate if you're more of an urgent care, or if you're more of a GP? Like, how do you communicate wait time? And do you put them right into an exam room? And do you, like, how are you doing that piece of the journey is really important. Sometimes I say digital check-ins are great. That's good. The big part of check-in and wait is, did you use digital forms? Because clients don't like, they don't have to do forms in their hands anymore anywhere else. And
Right.
sometimes they begrudgingly do a digital form, but once they get to you, they're happy that they did. And so, like, are you using that technology to make the arrive and wait much better? And then the exam and treatment. We typically rock this part. That is not the part I ever really like have to talk, because we are just really good. Once we get to the exam and the treatment part, we're
Yep.
so good at that part. The part in that piece I would think about is that estimate piece. And then the last is follow-up care. So checkout and follow-up care. When I talk about checkout, if we haven't tried to do checkout in a way that is maybe in the exam room or a digital text to pay, it's something that you might want to look at, because a crazy dog jumping up on the counter is hard for clients, and it always has been.
Yes.
And so now that we have the ability to check out in different ways through mobile or a text, are you looking into that? And then that follow-up piece. It doesn't always have to be phone calls anymore, because they all go to voicemail. Trust me, nobody listens to them. So are you
Right.
using your digital platform, any of those, to communicate with the client afterwards, so they remember that they came and they remember the value of what they did when they were with you?
Well, you just gave our listeners their first piece of homework, right? So, in the next few weeks, take a minute, sit down, re-listen to everything Stephanie just said, and just pick one part of your practice that you want to take a look at and see how that client journey could be improved. Stephanie, you just outlined everything for them. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to get to talk again in a couple weeks. So, we're going to talk in our next episode about really the nitty-gritty of applying technology to the client journey, so you can spend more time in person with your customers, connecting with them in that place where we all shine, right? That exam room and treatment area. So how can we grease the wheels on all the other areas of the client journey to be our best selves in that exam room?
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me, and I will see you in a couple weeks.